So week 14 has wrapped up and our first week of December football is complete. We got a lot of clarity for the playoffs this week, and I'm going to review all the matchups this week and grade how I think each team did. We may as well start with the Thursday night game with the Cowboys and Lions. This was a big game for both teams. Neither team could really afford to lose this game. The Cowboys, in order to stay alive after starting 3-5-1, and the Lions, who despite being 7-5 going into this game, were on the outside looking into the playoffs. That's just how much the NFC West has dominated. Like, the Lions being 7-5 and being out of the playoff picture is honestly ridiculous, but they managed to prove themselves this week. Jared Goff had a really nice game this week, and Jahmyr Gibbs, he dominated this game. I mean, Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who really shouldn't have been playing this game, they both had really good games, both going over 90 yards, but Jahmyr Gibbs, 3 touchdowns. He was basically unstoppable. I mean, the Cowboys, they hung around. They kept it close for the most part, but then the Lions just put the game out of reach. I mean, that fourth quarter was action-packed with both sides trading blows, but the Lions were basically in control of the entire second half. They jumped out to an early lead, and the Cowboys could really not come back from that. I mean, the Lions, for their quality of win, I'm putting them in A tier. This was not exactly a domination because their defense definitely got exposed a little bit, but the Cowboys just had some crucial early turnovers, and that just put the game out of reach and practically ended their season. I'm putting them in F tier. Really, the only path they could hope for at this point is if the Eagles just somehow collapse, because they are not making the wild card right now. And then we go into the Sunday slate with the Seattle Seahawks versus Atlanta Falcons. At the start of this game, this looks like a bit of a trap game. I mean, both sides weren't really scoring, and the Seattle offense just looks stuck in neutral. And after an interception in the second quarter, it looked like the Falcons could do something, and then a blocked field goal basically put the game back in neutral. They traded field goals at the end of the second half, and at halftime, it was 6-6. Yeah, this looks like this could be a problem, and the Falcons might pull another big upset, but after Rashid Shaheed returned the kickoff for a touchdown, it was all Seattle in the second half. They just kept scoring drive after drive. JSN finally started putting up some yards and a few touchdowns. And the Falcons just could not stop turning the ball over, even though it was some of the goofiest turnovers you'll ever see. The Falcons just looked outmatched in the second half. But for how close that was, that could have been a problem for Seattle, but they got it together in the second half. So I'm putting them in S tier. And the Falcons, you know what? I mean, they did get eliminated from the playoffs, but they did put up a fight against one of the best teams in the NFL, for a half at least. So I'll put them in low D tier. They're the only team in D tier right now, but they'll be low D tier just because they actually played decent in the first half. Next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals and Buffalo Bills. This was one of the best games of the year and in an exciting environment. A snow game in December with playoff lives on the line. The Bengals, despite only having 4 wins, are somehow alive in the playoff race because the AFC North is a garbage division this year. And the Buffalo Bills, they're trying to maintain their spot in the wild card and maybe get back into the division race, though that is quite unlikely at this point. This was an exciting game, though it wasn't very exciting for Buffalo fans at the start of it. I mean, it was a slow first quarter, but then the Bengals put up some touchdowns to jump out to a very early lead, 21-11, and it stayed that way until halftime. The Bills managed to respond coming out of halftime, and they drove down the field, and James Cook fumbled on the goal line. That could have ended their game after the Bengals went for a long touchdown drive, but the Bills managed to respond, make the game a little bit closer, and on the next drive, Christian Benford picked 6 on Joe Burrow to turn the game on its head. And it was all Buffalo from there on. Joe Burrow, on literally his next possession, threw a pick immediately again, which the Bills scored again. And yeah, the game was out of reach at that point. The Bengals did score again, but too little too late after Josh Allen scrambled for 30 yards on 3rd and 15 to end the game. Why do you not put a QB spy on Josh Allen is a mystery, but the Bengals defense is bad. I mean, they weren't awful today. It was kind of the offense falling apart a little bit there. But yeah, the defense needed to step up at the end, and they just didn't. I'm going to put the Bears. Why am I talking about the Bears? I'm talking about the Bills. The Bills go in A tier, but I'll put the Bengals in C tier because surprisingly, this doesn't end their season, but it doesn't really help. They can really go max 8-9, but you know, the AFC North is not a good division this year, so 8-9 could win the division, but Steelers with 7 wins, that's going to be hard to overcome when all they really need is basically 2 wins, with one of them being against Baltimore. And speaking of the AFC North, we'll look at the Steelers and Ravens. I mean, this was an AFC North game, so you know it's going to be kind of ugly. And it was very ugly for the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens, they rushed for 200 yards. It sure didn't feel like it because that Ravens offense was not functioning. Also, the Ravens did get several calls just not go their way. The Steelers kicking a field goal make it, but a random ticky-tacky unnecessary roughness penalty, I could not see how that was a penalty, but it led to the Steelers scoring a touchdown not long after. And then towards the end of the game, Isaiah Likely scores a touchdown. They overturn it. I mean, I guess I could see why it was overturned, but it really shouldn't have. If it was called incomplete on the field, okay, then maybe it stays incomplete. But it was called a touchdown on the field. There was not that much evidence to really overturn it. So I think it just should have stayed a touchdown. I mean, maybe the Steelers go down the field and score a touchdown in response. There was definitely time left on the clock. Also, the Ravens still had a chance to score there, and then they didn't. So they definitely could have overcome a bad call. But again, the offense just hasn't been good. And yeah, Lamar Jackson looked a little bit better this game, but still not great. I'm worried about the Ravens. It looked like they were back for a second. Now it looks like they're going to be in free fall. The Steelers looked like they were out of it. Now they're back in it. I don't know about the AFC North, to be honest. Either team could win the division. I guess I'll start with the loser. I'm going to put the Ravens in D tier. This was a bad loss, but it was fairly close and doesn't kill their chances, but it definitely does hurt them. And the Steelers, I'm going to put in B tier. That wasn't exactly the greatest game, but Aaron Rodgers, he had a pretty good game. Rushing touchdown for the first time in years. That's kind of funny. He had a good game. It could have been better, but high quality win. I'm tempted to put this in A tier just because of how much it means to the Steelers. But just based off their performance, I'm going to put them in B tier. And our next matchup is the Tennessee Titans versus the Cleveland Browns. This was one of the matchups that happened, and I'm going to be honest, I did not expect this result. I'm surprised the Titans put up 31 on the Browns defense. A bit of a shocker, and Tony Pollard, out of nowhere, puts up 160 yards. From where? I have no idea. Cam Ward, he was not great this game, to be honest. I mean, he threw a few touchdowns, but it was really Tony Pollard that carried this game somehow. And surprisingly, they kept Myles Garrett to only 1 sack. Shocker of the year. You would have thought he could have gotten the sack record this game, but no. Only held to 1 sack. Also, Shedeur Sanders. One hell of a game from him. Huge game. Like 360 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw a bad interception, but he was great this game. I'm actually genuinely surprised he was able to put up this performance. It kind of shows, yeah, he might actually do something in this league. And he at least deserves a chance to see what the Browns got in him for the rest of the season. Stefanski said he'd be the starting QB for the rest of the way. Also, the way they lost that game was idiotic. They went for 2 the first touchdown they scored for some reason. I don't understand why they did that. They should have just kicked the PAT and then made that decision. And then when it came to making the 2-point conversion to tie the game, they ran some stupid play that of course didn't work, with Shedeur Sanders not on the field when he was hot in that 4th quarter. Yeah. It was bad coaching there, and honestly, Stefanski is on the hot seat. Browns, again, not good, and if Shedeur Sanders pops off the rest of the way, he should be fired for his mishandling of the QB room. The Titans, I'll put in B tier just because they won kind of impressively, but this kind of hurts them more than it helps them. They're now out of the number 1 pick. Kind of expect them to get it back at some point, but who knows? There's definitely a lot of bad teams this year. In the Browns, I'll put in C tier because it was close. Little bit embarrassing to lose the Titans, especially with the defense they had, but I mean, I gotta rate that Shedeur Sanders game pretty highly. I mean, he put them in a position to win the game. The coaching staff just made bad decisions there. And our next game is the Commanders versus Vikings. Another genuinely shocking result. The Commanders were getting Jaden Daniels back this week. We thought, hey, maybe they have a slim shot at the playoffs. They technically weren't eliminated. Jaden Daniels coming back. Maybe he could beat this struggling Vikings team. No, Jaden Daniels was absolutely worthless this game. He threw an interception and got injured on the return. The same elbow he injured earlier in the season. That knocks him out of the game. Marcus Mariota couldn't do anything. And J.J. McCarthy had a great game. Surprise after the middle of the season he had. It was terrible. The Vikings cruised to 31-0 victory. I'm surprised about this result. I mean, the Vikings, they don't really have a chance for the playoffs, but you gotta feel good because maybe J.J. McCarthy just needed a quick little benching to get his head back into the game. And hey, they just dominated throughout. I'm going to put the Vikings in S tier above the Seahawks because this was a domination through the entire game. They completely shut down the Commanders. And it's honestly a shame that it's a wasted season for the Vikings. Also, Justin Jefferson is definitely mad. He's not getting any touches. But we'll see what it looks like in the coming games. And the Commanders, in dumpster fire. Putting Jaden Daniels back in a lost season only for him to get hurt again. Just take him out for the rest of the season. They got eliminated this game. Don't put Jaden Daniels back in harm's way. Just get a better pick this year, to be honest. You'll be better off with that. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins and New York Jets. I mean, the Dolphins winning this game is not exactly a surprise, but the margin of victory is a bit of a surprise because the Dolphins notoriously don't play well in cold weather games. They blew out the Jets in this game. It was never close at any point. They manhandled this team, and Tua didn't really have the greatest of games. I mean, he was fine. He didn't really make any serious mistakes. It was really the running game that carried the Dolphins this game. They went for nearly 240 yards in this game, with 2 running backs going over 90 yards. Jalen Wright held most of the carries, mostly because Achane got injured. 24 carries, and Devon Achane had the explosive runs in this game. The Dolphins, they're winning games. They're streaking together good string of wins, and maybe they could get to 10-7. The problem is with the Dolphins is they got a tough schedule ahead. They still have to play the Steelers. They have to play the Bengals, who are definitely scary, the Buccaneers, and the Patriots. It is hard to envision them winning 4 in a row. They did beat the Bills earlier on, but that was in Miami. And these are going to be some cold weather games, especially in Pittsburgh and Foxborough. If they win 4 more games, they genuinely deserve a playoff spot. But even then, I'm not sure they get it because they don't really play any wildcard teams in front of them. They don't play the Texans. They don't play the Chargers. They don't play the Bills again. So it'd be difficult for them to get into the playoff race. There's a slim chance as long as they keep winning. But hey, that was a very good win for them. I'll put them... tough decision. And just because of the strength of opponent, I'll put the Vikings ahead of them. Jaden Daniels is definitely a better quarterback than Brady Cook. Tyrod Taylor exited this game early due to an injury, so I'll just put the Vikings as a more impressive victory, though. This was also a clear domination for the Dolphins. And the Jets, they will go into F tier. That was a rough game. Home field advantage, and you don't even make it close. Our next matchup is definitely important for the playoffs. The Saints versus the Buccaneers. This was an embarrassing game for the Buccaneers. They could not lose this game with the Panthers on their heels, and they have yet to play the Panthers. So this makes it even more of a problem. The Saints, this should have been a free win. They were 2-10 going into this game. Nothing really going for them, and you just kept them around the entire game. You never really got ahead. The best you had was 17-14 in the third quarter. You allowed the Saints to drive down the field. And then in the fourth quarter, you could not convert a fourth down to save your life. It was bad. With how the Buccaneers played in that fourth quarter, they deserved to lose. And they did. This was an embarrassing loss, and they just could not lose this game. They are still alive for their division just because there's nobody ahead of them. They have yet to play the Panthers. So those two games will determine who wins this division. This does not help the Bucs' case. They are definitely missing Liam Cohen this year. I'm putting them in dumpster fire. Meanwhile, the Saints, I don't know if Tyler Shook is the future quarterback. He made some nice plays, made a stupid interception, but came back from that, led some touchdown drives, and won over the Buccaneers, who were a good team. So I'll give them credit there. I'll put them in B tier, below the Steelers, because the Steelers win means more. This doesn't really mean anything for the Saints other than pride, but it was a good quality win for the Saints. And another division game for first place, the Colts versus the Jaguars. This was a crucial game for both teams. The Colts, they were in the middle of a slide. They needed to catch themselves somehow. And the Jaguars, they were getting hot and needed this to take a stronger hold on their division. The Jaguars were leading the division going into this game due to tiebreakers, but it did not matter if they lost this game. But they easily dominated the Colts here. Trevor Lawrence, despite it being in the rain, had probably one of his best games of his career. It was excellent. He was making amazing throws down the field. He was looking decisive. And even though his completion percentage wasn't exactly the best, partially due to the conditions, he was throwing dots. This was the best I've seen Trevor Lawrence play in a while. And he's putting together a good string of games down the stretch. He had a solid game against the Chargers. Despite the turnovers, he had a decent game against the Cardinals. Then he had a pretty good game against the Titans, and now an excellent game against the Colts when he needed it most. The defense shut down Jonathan Taylor. They hadn't allowed a 70-yard rusher until this game, where Jonathan Taylor went for 74. So they haven't allowed a 75-yard rusher this season. Best run defense in the NFL. They forced some turnovers this game. And the big storyline from this game, Daniel Jones out for the season with an Achilles tear. The Colts, they're in trouble because who do they have at quarterback? Riley Leonard played okay. Not exactly great. You probably won't win any games because of him. And with how their schedule's looking, I don't know if they win another game this year. Really unfortunate for Daniel Jones, who looked like he maybe turned his career around. And now he's going to go into the offseason without a contract. And he's probably going to miss significant time next year. So sucks for Daniel Jones. But for the Jaguars, I'm putting them in S tier. This was a domination throughout the entire game, in the rain, impressive victory throughout, and if Trevor Lawrence can maintain this level of performance, the Jaguars might be a juggernaut in the AFC, but it depends on Trevor Lawrence. And the Colts, they will go into dumpster fire just because of how disastrous this game ended up being. They're missing Sauce Gardner, who they traded 2 first-round picks. Daniel Jones is out for a significant amount of time into next year, and they are in absolute free fall. They're looking to miss the playoffs at this point. And the Colts are signing who to play quarterback? And we have another divisional game, the Denver Broncos versus the Las Vegas Raiders. This was not a game that really anybody was interested in watching. The Broncos, they just took care of business. It wasn't exactly the flashiest of victories, but they did their job. They held time of possession for nearly 40 minutes. It was a pretty clear domination, and the Raiders put up some points in garbage time. I mean, the Denver defense held the Raiders in check basically the entire game. The Raiders couldn't do anything, and it was a good quality victory. Not a whole lot to talk about here. The Broncos, they're looking to go for the #1 overall seed. It's a good start, but they do have some tough games ahead of them. They still have to play the Chiefs. They have the Jaguars ahead of them, which that could be a dangerous game. And yeah, good quality victory. Raiders, they didn't do much. Not a whole lot to talk about here. So I'll put them in A tier. I'll just put them here just because I think these victories were more impressive. It was just a good quality win. Pretty good domination, but would have liked to see more for it to be S tier. And the Raiders, I will put in D tier. It was just a better opponent, and they put up some points late in garbage time, so makes you feel a little bit better about the team. And another divisional matchup for first place. The Chicago Bears versus the Green Bay Packers. This was a very highly anticipated matchup. The Bears going into this week held the #1 seed and the division lead. And the Packers, they were a game behind them. So this made for a very interesting matchup. This could have gone either way. I mean, the Packers, they got out to an early lead. It looked like this could be an easy domination for the Packers, but then the Bears, they hung around. They started putting up some touchdowns and got really close to winning that game. But that final play, Caleb Williams tries to get it all and game-ending interception. That was not the right decision for Caleb Williams, who in the second half was playing quite well. It's just he could have taken DJ Moore. He could have taken DeAndre Swift. He could have ran for the first down. He didn't need it all on that one play, and he just ended the game there. Coming off that Eagles victory, I would have thought the Bears would have played better, especially in the run game, but the Packers, they did a good job of shutting that down for the most part. And Jordan Love, he also had a pretty good game. The Packers offense was pretty good. I'm happy to say the Packers are starting to get hot at the right time, but these two teams play again later in the season. Actually, not long from now, in 2 weeks. So that's another highly anticipated matchup, and that could be for the division because the Lions, they're a few games behind, and the Packers already swept the Lions. So yeah, the Lions probably aren't winning the division, but the Bears and the Packers, another highly anticipated matchup in week 16. So I'm excited to see that. But time for these ratings. I'll put the Packers in upper B tier because they nearly threw this game away, but they came up with the big plays when it mattered most, and this was a huge victory for them. So I'll put them in upper B tier. Meanwhile, the Bears, they made it close. They almost got there in the end. Tough opponent. I'll put them in C tier because this doesn't exactly hurt them too much. They're still in the playoff picture, though they did drop all the way down to 7. A lot of things can change, especially if they beat the Packers again in week 16. In another divisional matchup, though this one's a little less interesting, the Rams versus the Cardinals. The Rams, they needed a bounce back game after losing to the Panthers last week. The Cardinals, they're just kind of reeling at this point. They just keep losing games. I thought this could have been close because of how the Rams looked last week, but no. Rams, they're back to form. Dropped 45 and 530 yards of offense. Puka Nacua dominated. Blake Corum out of nowhere has a really good game. And Jacoby Brissett throws for a good amount of yards. Michael Wilson has a decent game in garbage time. Yeah, I mean, the Rams, they are clearly the Super Bowl favorites despite losing against the Panthers. This was the bounce back game they needed to really regain their confidence. I think they are the team to beat in the NFC. I will put them at our #1 team this week in S tier. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, they will go into F tier just because of how bad that game was. They never really were close to getting into the game, but I'll put them ahead of the Cowboys and Jets because low expectations and doesn't really hurt them that much. It actually benefits them more. Better draft pick. So we'll see what the Cardinals' future looks like. In our Sunday night game, the Houston Texans versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, their run is over. At least their current run. They could absolutely come back next season or maybe a few seasons from now, but their current dynasty is over. They are not winning their division this year. We knew that for at least several weeks, but it is official that they cannot win their division. Their only hope is wild card, and they have 0 tiebreakers on any team that matters. They lost to the Bills, they lost to the Chargers, though they play them again, and they lost their one matchup to the Texans. And even if the Texans were to win the division, the Jaguars already beat them earlier on, so they don't have a tiebreaker with them either. So their only hope is maybe the Chargers collapse with their pretty difficult schedule, and they need to beat the Chargers to somehow sneak back into the playoff picture, but it is looking bleak right now because they did not look good on offense at all. Nothing was working. Dropped passes, a missed field goal in the second quarter, and when they finally built up momentum in the third quarter, Andy Reid decides to go for it on 4th and 1 on their own 30, doesn't get it. When there were 8 minutes left on the clock, they could have easily punted because the Texans in the second half, they couldn't do anything on offense. They finally had an answer for them, and then the Texans, they get a touchdown, and yeah, the Chiefs, they turn it over on downs again. Patrick Mahomes throws an interception. Yeah, this fell apart really quickly. The Texans, that defense is showing up week in and week out. That is a legitimate, scary unit and probably one of the best overall units this decade. So they are definitely a scary team to face in the playoffs. But they do have to get there. They have to continue winning their games. Though I find it pretty likely they'll either win out or at least get 3 wins. The Texans, this was a massive win for them. I'm putting them in A tier. Puts them 1 game closer in the division. But more importantly, it puts them in the playoffs for the first time this season. And the Chiefs, dumpster fire. That was an atrocious game for them, especially in the fourth quarter. Yeah, the Chiefs are in trouble. If they can't win next week against the Chargers, it's over. And our last matchup for the week is the Eagles versus the Chargers. What was this game? This was incredibly ugly by both sides. Both sides just kept creating turnover after turnover. Jalen Hurts turned the ball over twice in one play. It was ridiculous. And legit, I thought the Chargers were going to blow out the Eagles with how that first half went. And then they didn't. They just kept the Eagles around for the rest of the game. And the Eagles took the lead in the fourth quarter, which Justin Herbert had to work some magic to get into field goal range and take it to overtime. And then they got to overtime. The Chargers kick a field goal on their first overtime drive. And then the Eagles, they drive down the field, and Jalen Hurts throws an idiotic pick in the red zone on first down when he had a guy open underneath. In fact, he could have just ran for 5 yards and still be a better result. But no, he had to end the game for literally no reason. Now, fortunately for the Eagles, I still don't really see them having a fall off this late into the season just because of how their schedule lines up. They have 3 winnable games. If they go 2-2 in those games, maybe they leave the door open for Dallas, but I think they go at least 3-1. So I think the Eagles are fine, but with how they played in this game, dumpster fire. Because that was inexcusable by Jalen Hurts. Literally terrible. Legitimately terrible. I'm sorry if you started him in fantasy this week. That was rough. Meanwhile, the Chargers, I'm tempted to put them in C tier, but I'll put them in B tier because this was a critical win for them. With how tough their upcoming schedule is, they needed a win here in order to maintain their playoff hopes. With this win, they really only need to win 1 more game the rest of the way to get in, and I think they're able to do that. And these last teams, all of them were on bye, and 3 of them are playoff hopefuls. The Panthers, they're tied for the division and still have 2 games against the Buccaneers. Now, they do have a little bit of a tough game in the middle there, which may determine how things go if they lose the first one, but if they sweep the Buccaneers, they win the division no matter what. The Giants, they hold the first pick right now, so at least a little bit of consolation after how this season went. The 49ers, still injured, but they're starting to get some players back, and they still actually have a chance at the division. Depends how things go from here on out. And the Patriots, they're trying to get the number 1 seed. Even with Buffalo upcoming, I still think they win the division. They just have built such a lead. Sure, if they lose this game, they would be within a game of Buffalo, and if they lose again, they are in danger of losing the division, but with how their schedule is, I think they go at least 3-1. Though there is definitely a possibility they go 2-2 in the worst case scenario. Anyways, let's see how this upcoming week goes. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like and sub. It lets me know you guys actually enjoy these videos, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.